The story began with the protagonist playing a video game in which a sinister skeleton told the knight that he was truly worthy of calling him his rival. He said, after all, the rumors were true, that the title of the continent's nightmare suits him perfectly. But as long as the forces of light are with them, they will never give up. Sunghyun thought that this was a terrifying immortal king, as well as a righteous knight of light. He took a sip of soda and asked if their fight was too much of a show. Well, it was still a performance. And how did it come to this? Even this poor guy watching everything from his closet, they are all him. After some time, there was a knock on the protagonist's door. An employee, holding a piece of paper and a pen, said that he was from the Special Ability Control Bureau, Relocation and Investigation Department. Is he Sunghyun? The protagonist confirmed his words with an excited face. The employee said that his identity was confirmed. If he were to awaken, please report it to the Special Abilities Control Bureau. Sunghyun thought that this was the first time he had spoken to a stranger in half a year, and their conversation had just ended. This meant that he wouldn't have to open the front door for the next 6 months. It had been 2 years since he had last gone outside. Some might call him pathetic, others might accuse him of being weak-willed, but he was a victim of this distorted world. Suddenly, a reporter on the TV news said that firefighters were currently battling a fire at a shopping mall. It was reported that the arsonist was an awakened person. He set the fire before entering another world. Sunghyun wondered with a surprised face that it was an awakened person. Suddenly, all the people in the world began to awaken one by one. The mysterious skills known as special abilities. After awakening, people are forcibly transported to another world within 24 hours. They can only return after fulfilling certain conditions, but very few have managed to return alive. And out of despair, the awakened began to commit senseless crimes before getting to another world. 2 years ago, because of the prank of one such idiot, he lost both his family and his leg. He even plucked up the determination to try to get back on his feet, but after some time, the main character is sitting on a special exercise machine and trying to do leg exercises. He desperately sat down and asked, "What is all this for, if there is no point? Why is he so afraid to just go outside? If he had a little more determination, maybe something would change. If he could get out of here and go somewhere." Suddenly a system window appeared just above his head, which said that a dimensional distortion had been detected. Connection to the Akasha system is in progress. Awakening of a unique skill. The unique skill avatar has been awakened. 24 hours are left before the transition to another world. Sunghyun shouted in fear that this was probably some kind of joke. Why is everything so sudden? The system window says that if he does not enter the travel portal within the set time, he will have to use forced travel. Sunghyun opened the closet with a frightened look and thought. He heard that returning back takes about a year, and since time in another world flows 10 times slower. Does this mean he will spend as many as 10 years trying to get home again? After some time, the protagonist, dressed in full gear, stands in front of the magic portal. The system window says that there are 3 minutes left before his travel. Sunghyun excitedly grabbed his head and thought that he can't even just go outside, and here is a portal. He has neither strength nor any skills. How is he going to survive in another world? Suddenly he remembered that he has a skill. Sunghyun shouted loudly that he wants to activate the avatar skill. Suddenly a clone appeared in front of him. He jumped back in surprise and said that it was him. The protagonist thought that he sees 2 of his faces. This can't be. The avatar sees the same thing as him. He said with an excited face that his head was spinning when trying to move and control the avatar. Apparently it is impossible to move at the same time. Suddenly from the system window there was an announcement that there was 1 minute left before the move. If he does not enter the portal, he will be forcibly moved. Sunghyun desperately laid his head on the clone's chest and said that in such a situation the avatar is not needed. His ability is as useless as he is. If only someone could take his place. The protagonist sent the avatar to the portal and the system window said that the identity of the awakened one was confirmed. The move began. After some time, watching how the avatar dissolves in the portal, the protagonist shouted in surprise that he succeeded. The move portal took the avatar for him. The system window said, the move to the Autarka dimension is complete. Suddenly Sunghyun saw himself standing in a dense forest. He thought in fear that the avatar should have moved. Why did he end up here? The system window said that he could return to Earth through the return option in the karma store. Karma can be earned through adventures. Accumulated karma is 0. Suddenly, Sunghyun's eyes doubled and he thought that he was not in this forest. He was just seeing all this through the eyes of the avatar. He excitedly shouted that he was sick. He was going to throw up. Suddenly, he woke up at home and ran sharply to the sink, after which he threw up. A moment later, Sunghyun said that at least he survived the move. Let the avatar be summoned in this place. A double appeared in front of him and approaching him, the protagonist asked what he should do with this useless ability. Suddenly, a system window popped up, which said that he had received an achievement returned to Earth without using the karma store. He received a bonus 1 time per day he can move to where he was before using a portal. His karma is increased. The protagonist was surprised to think that in this way he became the first awakened one who returned in such a short time. The system window says that the protagonist's balance is 1,910,213 karma points. He was surprised to think that he was given so much just for returning the avatar. In one go, he received points for as many as 10 years. Karma is awarded depending on the influence a person has in another world. Good deeds or bad, murders or honest work, it does not matter. The accumulated karma can be used to improve abilities or return to Earth. Maybe this is some kind of mistake. What if he still has to go to another world? Sunghyun smiled and said, he didn't know that this would work, so what difference does it make? He looked at the system window and said that returning to Earth is pointless, because he is already here. The system window says that improving your unique skill is 300,000 karma. Increasing status, you can find out more. He asked with interest what is in the increased status section. Opening the tab, he saw the inscription that he can increase the ability to regenerate for 10,000 karma. The main character wondered in surprise, what is this regeneration? After Sunghyun pressed the button, in an instant his legs were restored and he said, he just felt a strange sensation in his legs. The main character looked at his legs and thought that his injuries were gone. The pain in his leg was not just an inconvenience for him. This wound marked his farewell to his family, and it was because of this wound that he did not leave the room. In the system window it is written that his ability to regenerate exceeded the standard level 1. He received the ability Super Regeneration. Effect increases the power of recovery. After some time, Sunghyun with a smile pumps his legs on the simulator and thinks that with the help of the points received, he increased his karma and was able to cure his leg. Admiringly watching the productive training, he said that the legs became very strong. But he still had quite a lot of karma left, where to use it. He looked at the function to improve unique skill and clicked on it. After touching the system window, he asked what he could do if he improved his avatar. After a while, the protagonist stands in front of his clone and says with a smile that he is a real man. The double asked that the physique is very good. He probably tried very hard. Sunghyun said, it is all thanks to hard training. He thought that after awakening the avatar, his consciousness was divided in 2, which allowed him to move freely. And he also received a new ability by improving his weapon skills. The system window says at the center of the mind he can choose what information will be sent to him. Sunghyun thought, this means that not only will he get rid of disorientation, but he will also not feel pain, even if the avatar is hurt. He grabbed the gamepad with a smile and said that he could go to another world while sitting at home and wrapped in a blanket. The main character thought that he had the opportunity to control the avatar, just like in the game. This is not the only change, now there are 3. He asked thoughtfully that the number of his avatars will increase during the development. He will get confused. This will not work. He needs to decide on names. It is not right to continue calling them avatars, but nothing comes to his mind at all. Sunghyun looked at the table, saw a package of ketchup and said that the first clone is now called Hans. The system window says that he has General Skills Mind Center, Super Regeneration. Individual Skills Mana Attraction. Note the first avatar is Sunghyun. The protagonist looked at the second clone and said that he will be Heinz. The system window says that he has General Skills Mind Center, Super Regeneration. Individual Skills Survivability. Note the second avatar is Sunghyun. The protagonist thought that they have Mana Attraction and Survivability? What a horror, what kind of species is this? So isn't it time for him to complete the most long-awaited quest? Sunghyun sat down on the couch and began to control the clones. Hans began to teleport to another world, and Heinz took a bag of garbage and went outside. The main character, seeing the rays of the sun, thought that he was not worried at all. The center of the mind was working normally. He said that Hans must also be in another world already. Switching control to the clone, He said that it was night here, in this peaceful at first glance forest, as if there was not a soul. Suddenly, a black panther came out of the thick of the forest. He excitedly asked how it was possible to suddenly appear. The beast attacked him, but Hans took out his sword and inserted it into the panther's mouth. The main character thought that everything was exactly as he expected, no fear or pain at all. In short, everything here is exactly like in the game. Hans pulled the sword from its sheath and killed the panther. He, sitting on the ground near the dead body of the animal, asked, "Is it so hard for him because he hasn't really leveled up? He will have big trouble if he stays here and runs into another monster." Suddenly, he saw a small settlement in the distance. After some time, Hans came to the village and Glokali said with a smile that he is welcome. He was walking along a forest path teeming with monsters, and at such a late hour it's impressive. Hans grinned and said that now he has wounds all over his body. Let the elder tell him, could he stay in the village for the night? Glokali agreed with a smile and said that they should help each other. Hans exhaled with happiness and happily thanked him. After some time, they walked through the village past the houses. The elder asked that he saw such clothes and equipment for the first time. He probably came from far away. Hans chuckled and said that he got a little lost, walked and ended up here. The elder said that he was glad to meet a new face after such a long time. Maybe they should drink some alcohol at the tavern? After a while, Hans is lying on the bed and smilingly says that they even gave him a room here. The longer he is here, the more he thinks that the people here are very kind. How long has it been since he was last so happy to communicate? Today was a really good day. At this time, the protagonist is sitting on the couch and, holding a mug of alcohol in his hands, says that it is just super to eat chicken after a shower. And also traveling around the world, it is beautiful. He even somehow embarrassed in front of Heinz. He thought that he is now training to use his survivability. He does not know when he will have to send him away, so let him practice. Sunghyun smiled and said that it was all great, but no matter how hard his clones worked, he had to learn more about what was going on in the other world, and what kind of place it was in general. He opened his laptop with a smile and thought that he would be a great leader. Suddenly a system window popped up, saying that the avatar was dead. All skills and acquired data of the avatar would be reset. The protagonist was horrified to think that Hans had died. Sunghyun, pointing his finger at the system window, said that Hans had died in that village. This was to be expected. Perhaps it was the work of that old man. Maybe he had put something in the drink. How ill-considered of him. Suddenly he thought that he had reconnected to his avatar. At this time, an elder and a man were standing near Hans in the village. Glokali said that he thought that he would be useful, but in fact he was an empty shell. This guy got to them through the forest alone, so he thought that he was very difficult. But he became another elite skeleton. The main character began to control Hans's body and wondered in surprise what was going on. The system window says that the character's race has been changed to undead. He received a special skill, Decomposed Heart. Hans, race undead. General skills, Mind Center, Super Regeneration. Individual skills, Mana Attraction. Note, he became undead. Thanks to the Mind Center effect, his mind is not damaged. Sunghyun worriedly wondered what was going on. He looked to the side, saw a large number of skeletons behind the glass, and fearfully wondered if it was possible that these idiots turned all the residents into undead. Suddenly a living man entered the basement. The main character wondered, who is this? This guy, he was in the tavern yesterday. Are the people he met really black magicians? The man asked with a displeased face. How much longer should he hang around in this hole? He noticed Hans's body on the floor and began to stare at it. The protagonist worriedly wondered what he was staring at. Did he really notice that he had come to his senses? The man pointed his finger with displeasure and asked, why was this knuckle still here? Why did he have to redo everything everyone else had done? Let the skeleton's body stand over there. Sunghyun worriedly thought, even though his heart was no longer working, he almost had a heart attack. He felt a force trying to force him to move against his will. If he concentrated, he could ignore this force, but for now it would be better to obey. The man asked with displeasure, why did the old man always make him check these weirdos? What a meticulous person he was. Sunghyun thought that this influence was very familiar to him. The same force that moved his dead body. Was it all because of the Mana Attraction skill? It seemed that he had figured out how it worked. Maybe he will be able to take control of all the other undead. A week later, the protagonist controls Hans's body and sits in the basement on boxes. He used magic and the skeleton sitting in front of him on the floor magically stood up. He thought that he finally managed to control others. Although, of course, everything turns out very peculiar. And he can only influence one undead, and not a crowd. An elite skeleton is not capable of more. Suddenly he heard the hiss of a rat and abruptly grabbed it. Sunghyun happily thought that here it is. After all, it was this that had been gnawing at his heels all week. What a nimble and little nasty thing it is. A minute small and fast. And what if a rat is under the influence, and not a person? He took the rat's body and used magic on it. Suddenly the animal's eyes sparkled red and Sunghyun, letting it go, happily thought about making it run forward. Operation Nightwatch begins. With its help he will learn everything he needs. After some time, the rat ran outside and saw the man. Sunghyun, observing this with a special skill, wondered why this guy was whining incessantly. What is in the other warehouse? The man opened the door. The rat began to run up to the passage, when suddenly a powerful charge of energy appeared. Sunghyun thought that even if he turned off all emotions with the center of the mind, he would still instinctively feel this. Getting any closer is too dangerous. At this time, Jeffrey asked the man when the maturation process will end. Because of the fragment of the immortal king, sometimes it feels like part of his soul is sucked out of him when he goes there. He asked in surprise, "They will be soon, right? The teacher gets stuck there every day." Jeffrey asked displeasedly, "Isn't it funny that they guard here too? Traps are set not only throughout the village, but even here, so that not even a mouse can run." The protagonist thought that the thing he saw was probably a fragment of the immortal king. So, where else can he gather information? Where did that old idiot go? Suddenly, a magical attack pierced the rat's body. The elder came up with a smile and said that it was a simple mouse. The protagonist wondered in surprise, was he really exposed? The old man came closer, looked at the corpse and asked that it was undead. He did not feel black magic, but its body was filled with dark mana. Was it because of the influence of mana that the rat turned into undead? There is only one place overflowing with dark mana. He approached the man and asked that Jeffrey was the main one in the warehouse today. The protagonist thought that the rat would forgive him. He will definitely avenge her death. He asked her to watch over him from heaven. After some time, Jeffrey went down to the basement with wild aggression and shouted, "Who could have known that a rat would appear here? Why make such a fuss over a rodent? This is a stupid damn old man. Hey, why the hell is he standing there like that? Let him follow the order to stand up straight." He began to menacingly approach the undead and, raising his fist, asked who he told to stand up straight. Jeffrey, smiling, grabbed the undead by the hair and asked, "Isn't this the arrogant idiot who spoke out against him? Didn't he threaten to kill him if he did anything to his family? Let him repeat what he said then." "Oh yeah," he ripped out his tongue. Jeffrey, smiling, threw it on the floor and said that it was fun when they hunted down every idiot in the village. But still, he must be happy, because his wife is here. By the way, where are her children? Do other families have them? Suddenly the undead attacked him from behind and bit him in the neck. Jeffrey fell to the floor in horror and asked what happened to him. He orders him to stop. He stretched out his hand and started using magic, when suddenly the undead wife attacked him from behind and they killed him. The protagonist, controlling the body of Hans, thought that their revenge was just beginning. After some time, Sunghyun, controlling the body of Heinz, approached the village guards and shouted that his brother lives in this village. The guards asked, "He left not long ago, right? What made him think that they would let some stranger in?" Heinz said that in that case, let them arrange a meeting for him with the village elder. Lokali came up and asked what happened. Heinz approached him and greeted him with a smile. He said he thinks that his twin brother Hans is somewhere here. The protagonist thought that having two avatars would definitely come in handy in moments like this. Thanks to Heinz, who distracted the old man, he easily obtained a fragment of the immortal king. He absorbs the dark energy from the undead around him. No, rather, the fragment resonates to make up for what it lacks. However, everyone here looks insanely strong. It seems that the place where he was before was a garbage warehouse. How annoying it is for these idiots to still dare to turn up their noses. Well, now they will know what it's like. He brought the fragment to himself and a powerful charge of energy was heard around. At this time, Heinz said that they are twins, which means that they can always tell where the other is. The elder said with a smile that it was quite hard to believe. Suddenly, he felt something and excitedly shouted, "Something is wrong with the fragment. Let them kill this idiot immediately." Lokali used magic and in the form of a dark monster quickly rushed to the scene. The guards excitedly aimed their spears at Heinz, but he suddenly evaporated. At this time, the protagonist thought that this was an irresistible flow of negative emotions from the fragment. The center of the mind filters out the information, but it comes down with incredible force. I wonder if anyone could withstand this and remain sane? Suddenly a powerful volley of energy was heard and a system window appeared, which said that his essence meets the conditions. Information about the essence immortal magician Demilik. Important information: rank increased due to the power of the fragment of the immortal king. Dark magic hidden in the fragment assimilated with the essence. He received a special skill, demonic wisdom. Important information grants the gift of dark magic and its absolute understanding. At this time, the man is standing in the basement and says that Jeffy is such an idiot. He couldn't even cope with a zombie rat, and now he has to clean this up. Suddenly an elder called out to him and shouted at him to quickly check the fragment and also contact Jeffy. He went to the cage and asked why he was silent. Suddenly a crowd of undead climbed out at him. Hans asked, "Is the weather nice today, is it?" The man thought in fear that this was impossible. How could he talk? The undead began to grab his hands and tried to kill him, but the man used a small little charge and fought off the attack. Suddenly the cage broke and all the monsters crawled out. Hans said that it was impolite to ignore people when they greeted him. He thought that he did not know if demonic wisdom was somehow connected with this, but just by looking at dark magic, he already knew how to use it. Suddenly a powerful explosion was heard and all the undead crawled out into the street. Hans directed them to attack and said that they should not let anyone escape, let them kill everyone in this village. A moment later, the body of a skeleton fell in front of him, and the elder said with a serious face that he definitely should have become an elite skeleton. What did he do with the fragment of the immortal king? Oath of disobedience, Elder Glokali. Hans said that they had not seen each other for a long time. Well, thanks to him, he lost his heart, so he found a new one in the warehouse. The elder said aggressively, he had the audacity to combine a fragment of an immortal king with such an insignificant body. Let him die right now with the finger of death spell. In an instant, a powerful blast of magic flew towards Hans and knocked out his hand. He asked displeasingly, does he really not know decency? Attacking someone who is speaking is rude. Glokali aggressively shouted at him to shut his mouth. He spent so much effort and resources during the entire year of this maturation. He was so close to gaining a power that was more powerful than anything in the world. So this can't end with just turning an elite skeleton into a Demilik. The elder used the Dark Thorn spell. Hans thought, does he want to defeat a newbie with high-ranking magic? He, being wrapped in dark magic, shouted that he was the only one who can control the fragment. He would not have succeeded. Glokali said that he did not know how he was able to cope with the destruction, but he would destroy his body and use it for experiments. The spell of destructive ectoplasm. Hans shouted in displeasure at him to stop reciting skills before using them. Let that murderer Alfred die already. The elder said a name and asked that he knew someone from the village. Did he really sneak in here on purpose? Suddenly, dark magic rushed at him from behind, but Glokali parried the attack and thought that it did not matter. He quickly got used to dark magic. Is this all because of the fragment? He cannot afford to waste time here. The elder raised his hand in the air and used the skill of Pact of Destruction. In an instant, the souls of the black magicians who fought the undead began to come out and gather near the old man's hands. Glokali put on the dark crown and used the spell of Return to the Abode of the Dead. Hans asked excitedly that he increased his power at the cost of the souls of dark magicians. The elder, creating a powerful magic charge, shouted that he would have a chance to win if he had all the power of this fragment. But now just let him die, the flame of the soul soaked in darkness. In an instant, a lightning bolt of magic flew into the heart of Glokali. Hans said that he almost fell asleep while he was saying his spell. And by the way, thanks to him, he plunged headlong into dark magic. The elder, bleeding, fell to the ground and asked how could he die so senselessly. Hans looked up at the sky and thought, he hoped that Alfred saw everything. He made sure to put an end to his revenge, so let him rest in peace. Some time later, Rister prays in front of a large statue. Suddenly there was a knock on the room. She opened the door and Martin asked that she had already finished praying. She agreed and asked if she could ask him to contact the others. From the west, the ghost of the resurrection of the immortal king was detected. Martin asked again in fear, the immortal king? He will immediately gather the council. Rister thought that this was the resurrection of the one who plunged the continent into horror hundreds of years ago. She will not allow something like this to happen again. Hans, examining the battlefield, said, "This is certainly devastation. At least several hundred undead were destroyed." Then he, with a slight grin, added, "But losses are always replenished, so there is no need to be sad. The most wonderful thing about necromancy is the ability to create soldiers from corpses." He drew attention to his missing limb, and shaking his head said, "So, we will need to take care of the hand first. Today he has already walked a lot." Looking around, Hans noticed a skeleton and, tearing off his arm, assessed the appearance of it. After that, he attached it to his shoulder and, putting his other hand to the place of attachment, enveloped this place with energy, thinking, "Activate super regeneration." Clenching his fist, he said, "Perfect." Thinking, he asked, "Where to start?" Putting his hands forward, he directed his energy at the skeleton and said, He must become his subordinate." Hans thought about how evil wisdom was whispering the way to him, and the fragment of the immortal king was giving him strength. He must return the remaining magical power in his body and cleanse it of the fragments of thoughts. But suddenly the skeleton fell apart. Hans raised his hands in surprise and asked, "What? Didn't work?" After a while, he stood in front of the undead and, folding his arms on his chest, said, After several repetitions, it finally dawned on him. He looked at the village chief and pointed his hand at him, asking if he should turn him into an undead with a soul to extract information from him. Grabbing Malcolm's body by the clothes and lifting it up, he exclaimed in surprise, "What? The old man doesn't have a soul." It seemed to have been extracted somehow through this magic circle. The clothes on the old man's body opened, revealing a magic symbol on his chest. Hans guessed that this could have been a security measure. Throwing the body, he added that it would be strange for them not to think of such a small thing, considering the scale of this. But no matter, he could use his body. He then concentrated energy in his hand and, after thinking, decided to turn him into a high-level undead with consciousness and good combat skills. Directing the energy directly to the body, he thought, to desecrate the remaining magical power in the body, to collect Malcolm's thoughts and strengthen his personality. A few moments later, the death mage stood in front of him. Rising to his feet, he said that he was waiting for his order. Hans looked at him curiously and said, "He is speaking." He did not even expect such a result. "His name is Malcolm. From now on he will obey him." He must answer, damn it. After that, he hit him in the skull, and the death mage desperately agreed with him. Then he rubbed the bruise. The avatar thought, even if he lost his memories, all his sins were still there. So he will mock him to the fullest. And turning his attention to the cane, he said that it looks pretty good. Malcolm's bones shook with fear. Then the avatar turned his attention to the mountain of corpses, and more specifically to the zombies, and thought, this young zombie, who killed Jeffy along with him. He put his hand on his head and thought, well, he should rest in peace with his family. And after that, he directed fire at the building. At this time, the protagonist was sitting on the floor opposite the table and smiling, holding his full belly, said, "Ha, I ate too much. God, how delicious." And then he looked at his phone screen and asked, what was the gold rate in that day? He thought that the village was inhabited by magicians. There was a lot of gold there. Just think, they had accumulated only treasures. Maybe he should take a look at the loot. He put his hand forward and said, "Summon Hans." The next moment, his avatar appeared in front of him, and an ominous aura filled the room. The protagonist covered his face in fear and shouted, "Cancel the summoning." When the avatar disappeared, he said, breathing heavily, that he already thought he was going to die. He scratched the back of his head and thought, what should he do? He needed to summon Hans, but maybe he should improve his unique skill first? Open a karma shop. The next moment, a system window appeared in front of him, and he was surprised to note that he had earned much more than he expected. The last time he had a little over 400,000. He then selected the item to improve a unique skill and spent 300,000. A message appeared in front of him, saying that as his skill improved, the number of avatars he could own would increase. His mental strength exceeded the norm, and he clenched his fist, enveloped in energy. This skill, Serenity, protected against external stimuli and mental attacks. After a while, he began to put gold in a paper bag and, looking at his avatar, thought that, given his normal state of health next to Hans, Serenity could be applied to him, unlike the center of the mind. It was amazing how he got the right skills every time. When the bag was full of gold, he said, "Great, time to sell the gold." Soon he placed the filled bags in the backpack with gold on the table in front of the committee. The workers opened their mouths in surprise and covered their eyes from this precious glow. The protagonist asked them to deposit all the funds into his account. He then walked outside, and the employees bowed after him, thanking him for his trust. Sunghyun wished them a good job with a smile. He looked at his shadow on the ground and remembered that Hans had hidden it with dark magic, just in case. He even put a mask on it. Perhaps he was worried for nothing. Suddenly, an explosion occurred in the building behind him. Wolf stood in the half-destroyed wall and said with a grin, "They hit the jackpot." Holding a bag in his hand, he grinned and asked who would have thought that there was so much gold in such a remote place. The robber next to him looked at him and said, "Stop chatting, it's time for them to run." They jumped down and ran forward, and Wolf shouted that he knew. When they ran up to Sunghyun, he looked at them in fear and shouted, "Villains! Someone needs to report them." The villains, the ones who commit crimes using their awakened powers. And then there are those who protect citizens from such bastards. He remembered sitting on the ground while injured and watching a huge explosion, but he was pulled out of his memories by a powerful blow to his cheek. As the wolf dealt the blow, he shouted for him to shut up. The protagonist put his hand to the bruised area and thought that the guards would probably track them down. After all, he couldn't do anything. The wolf confidently ran forward and said, "Great. Everything is going according to plan." The bandit hanging on his back said that they had plenty of time. The guards will arrive in about 3 minutes. They just need to get to Portal. Is she here? They looked ahead in surprise, seeing a girl lying on the ground. The wolf shouted in alarm, "Portal." He lifted her head and said, "Portal, she needs to wake up." Who did this to her? The bandit looked to the side in fear and turned to the wolf and told him to look there. Hans was standing in front of them. His mask was glowing, and the wolf asked, "Who was there?" "The guards." The bandit looked at him and said that this idiot was not one of them. The next moment, Hans reached for the mask on his face and thought that Sunghyun was not capable of anything. The bandits raised their hands in fear, and the avatar smirked and thought, but Hans is a different matter. After some time, the guards of the South Korean Returned Association ran to the scene. The guard running in front confidently exclaimed, "Here." Turning around, he looked at his colleagues and urged them to hurry. Was he going to miss him again this time? When they arrived at the scene, he looked around in surprise and asked, "What happened here?" The bandits were lying on the ground, defeated, and the wolf had lost his mask. The guard assumed that someone had dealt with the villains and disappeared, but they couldn't have gotten far. Turning to his colleagues, he gestured to the surroundings and told them to carefully examine everything around them. Hans, like a shadow, flew past them and headed towards the protagonist. When they reunited, Sunghyun smiled and noted that he had warmed up well. He then walked around the parking lot with his hands in his pockets, and happily noted that sometimes relieving stress in this way was not a bad idea. At this time, Heinz, Sunghyun's second avatar, who possessed the unique skill Vitality, stood at the entrance to the city. With a smile on his face, he shielded his eyes from the sun and happily said that he finally made it here. He remembered Malcolm's words about the city to the east, which was not far from him, and concluded that the old man had not lied after all. Entering inside, he said, finally this is his debut in another world, Heinz. Although there is still everything ahead. Looking around, he noticed, but why was the city so empty? They were not interested in newcomers at all. At that moment, in the alley behind him, a robber, turning to Diana, exclaimed, "Was this a joke?" Pointing his finger at her, he said that he warned her. She folded her hands in a prayer pose and, looking at him with fear, apologized, asking for a little more time. The robber demanded that they both pay him 2 silver coins, and they had 3 days to do everything. If there was no money, they would have no other choice. Heinz, watching what was happening out of the corner of his eye, thought, local thugs and a young girl who was being twisted around their fingers. A boring cliché. He decided to pass by, since it was none of his business. But suddenly Diana, running away from the robbers, crashed into him. Moving away, she lowered her head and asked for forgiveness. Heinz offered to listen to her, how well she knew this city. He supposed he needed a guide anyway. She asked, what? Who was he, uncle? Heinz looked at her with a grin, holding 2 silver coins in his hand, and said that he was a possible employer of hers. Perhaps they could discuss the terms. She looked at the coins in his hand with admiration. Soon they came to a building, and she pointed at it with her hand, saying that this inn would be one of the best places of his stay. The girl's name was Diana. She asked what he thought. Did he like this? She was barely making ends meet, taking care of her sick brother after the loss of their parents. And she did not have the means to pay the local tax. Heinz handed her a silver coin, and she held out her hands in admiration. He said okay, she should come to him tomorrow as soon as she woke up. She agreed to be his guide for 2 silver coins a day. Heinz lay down on the bed, put his hands under his head and getting comfortable said, well, he will think that he is doing a good deed, even if she just wants to rob him. It was time to go to bed. After a while, he sat up in bed and scratched his head, saying that the bed was terribly uncomfortable and that he couldn't fall asleep. Then he heard someone sneezing outside, went to the window, put his hand to the glass and looked down in surprise. Then he shouted, hey, is that her? Diana was sitting on the ground, leaning her back against the box, and looked at him in surprise. Then she smiled and said, hello. He was indignant, but still asked why she was waiting for him there. After a while, they were already sitting at the table and having breakfast. He said that she shouldn't do that anymore and come closer to lunch. She, chewing a piece of food, said, yes, uncle. He was indignant again and said that he had already asked her not to call him that. She noticed a piece of bread on his plate and asked if he was full yet. He replied that he was and that she could take it if she was hungry. She put the bread in her bag with a smile and thanked him. The town was called Azantu, a small town located on the western edge of the kingdom of Talia. Heinz and Diana were walking through the streets of the town. He put his hand on a drawing on the wall and said that it reminded him of ordinary medieval towns, but this symbol that was everywhere seemed unusual. Then he looked closer and said that it looked like paint. She noticed that it was blood. He asked, is that true? He didn't think so. He sniffed the symbol and she asked, did he eat venison soup yesterday, right? He turned around abruptly and looked at her in surprise and then said, how did she know? With a smile, she pointed to her nose and said that she had a very good sense of smell. He thought, how interesting. Her sense of smell was so good. Maybe this was her special skill. Then they walked forward and he asked what the symbol meant. She replied that it was the emblem of the Varkalak Guild, which controlled this place. But before she could finish her sentence, she began to back away in fear, colliding with Heinz. He asked, what was wrong? She replied, that smell. He asked, what was she smelling now? She took a deep breath, turned around, clenched her fists and exclaimed, freshly baked bread. He simply had to try it. He asked, didn't she eat a minute ago? She pointed her finger forward, saying that she was already hungry. The smell went into an alley and stopped at a door, behind which a corpse was visible. A few days later, Heinz was leaning against the wall with his arms folded. He said that she had never been late before, maybe something was wrong. At that moment, a bandit approached him and said, hey buddy. He looked at him in surprise and the bandit, with his arms folded, said that they should talk. The avatar thought, has it really come to this? And the next moment, he handed them a handful of silver coins and told them to take it. He tried to put on a kind face and smiled, saying that there weren't many, but he hoped that they could at least help maintain public order. The bandits looked at each other with a smile, and one of them picked up a silver coin. He said that they had quickly found a common language. Heinz thought that he had brought money with him for just such an occasion. Then he noticed the neck of one of the bandits, and thought that it had the same symbol as on the walls of the city. He remembered how Diana had told him not to even think about hiding in the alleys. They needed to leave the city as soon as possible. He wondered how scared the girl had been that she was so afraid of them. Then the bandits moved to a safe distance, and one of them, turning to the high on them, asked why he had grabbed this brat. His comrade replied, how should he know, idiot? They were just following orders. The avatar looked at them in surprise and thought, brat? Don't tell me those 2 bastards grabbed Dien? Then he shouted at them, wait a minute. They turned around and looked at him in surprise. And he clenched his fist and thought, to hell, timing is important in these things. If the situation gets dangerous, he'll just cancel the call. He shouted, but there was something he wanted to know. At that moment, Diana called him, and he turned around and asked in surprise, huh? Diana? The bandit began to flex his fist and said, so, what is their friend interested in? Heinz smiled awkwardly and said, is the silver he gave us enough? After a while, he returned with a bag in his hands and said that they took everything. Then he threw the bag aside and, angry, looked at Dien and shouted, hey! They were supposed to meet a long time ago. Did she even know how much she had given? No dinner tonight. She looked down and said with tears in her eyes, her little brother was missing. Tears rolled down her cheeks and she told him that he had recently gotten better because he had finally been able to eat, but now she could not find him anywhere. The avatar remembered the bandits' conversations and wondered if it was possible that they were talking about Diane's brother. Then he asked if it could be Varkalak. She looked ahead in horror, and he said that he had heard them talking about some small child. In despair, she fell to her knees and clutched her head and said, "No." Heinz looked at her in surprise and asked, "Huh?" He told her not to worry so much. If they demanded a ransom, he would help with money. She said that they really took him, Aaron would die. All they needed was blood, money would not help. He put his hand to his chest in surprise and asked, "Blood? Well, why?" She sat up, started shaking, and said that this city was a warehouse with live blood bags for vampires. At this time, the vampire standing on the roof said, "The smell of dark mana is very strong. Did they kill each other because of the fragment of the immortal king? What a pity, he wanted to destroy the fragments once they were fully matured." Then he smirked and said that he had no idea who stole it, but he knew where it was going. He folded his arms and said, "So it won't be difficult to find the thief." At this time, Heinz, not understanding, asked, "A vampire?" Diana, still crying, answered that it was, including the Varkalax. All the organizations are run by vampires. Even if he escaped the city, none of them would survive. She desperately wiped the tears from her face and said that they were doing their best to hold on. Day after day, they were trying their best. Then she covered her face with her hands and said, "Damn, she and her little brother will get eaten anyway." The avatar grabbed her face and shouted at her to come to her senses. If her words were true, they didn't have much time. Did she know where they could have taken her brother? She hesitantly replied that she didn't know if he was going to help her. Going on alone was just dangerous. Heinz smiled and told her not to worry. He knew how to fight back against these scoundrels. He thought, the mission to save the unlucky girl was beginning. Sometime later, some bandits were playing a card game in a tavern. One of them threw some silver coins on the table and said, "All in." The bandit looked at him with a smirk and asked, "Hey, where did a debtor like him get such a big amount of money?" He replied with a smile that he robbed some idiot this morning and made a good profit. At that moment, Heinz swung open the doors to the tavern with a blow of his hand. One of the bandits stood up from his seat and walked up to him with a smile. His comrade said, "What kind of idiot is this? Who is he?" The bandit stopped him with a hand gesture and asked him to wait. Then he put his hand on the avatar's head and, pointing his finger at him, said, "Kid, so this is the idiot they robbed. Did he come to give them more money?" He laughed and asked, "Did he want to share with them?" Near the entrance to the building, to the left of the wall, right on the vampire sign, drops of blood were dripping, and a guard was kneeling, leaning his broken head against the wall. The bandit asked what happened to the guards. Did he give him a coin or what? Heinz said that he would not ask a second time where he took the child. The bandit pointed his finger at him and indignantly asked, "What? Is he crazy? Does he even know who he is dealing with?" At that moment, the avatar stabbed the bandit in the throat with a knife and said that he knew exactly what kind of scum these people were. Those who interfere with families to satisfy their selfish greed. Scum. He thought he had dealt with one. There were still two left. The bandits rushed towards him. One of them swung his knife and shouted, "What the hell is this guy?" His comrade shouted, "Does he even know where he is? He needs to die." Heinz also swung his knife and thought, he has durability, and he has excellent super skills. He can do it. The avatar attacked one of the bandits, while the other tried to stab the knife into the exposed part of his body. The bandit, his hands shaking, struggled to move the knife forward, wondering what this was. Heinz stabbed him with the knife and thought, -2. Then he moved aside and said with a smile, "A bulletproof vest made in Korea, bastard." The bandit behind him swung his weapon, but the avatar turned around in a sharp motion and used his magical barrier. The bandit exclaimed in surprise, "A magic barrier? Where did he get such a magic tool?" At that moment, a knife pierced his chest, and the avatar thought, -3. Then he looked at the magic items on his belt and thought, good thing he brought so many magic tools with him. He looked around inside. Is it all over? Did he bring too many magic tools? He didn't even use half of them. At that moment, a few more bandits came down the stairs, and looking down, one of them shouted, "What's all the commotion about?" "Huh? What kind of guy is that?" Heinz looked at them uncertainly and thought, damn. His long tongue got him into trouble again. There were screams coming from the building, 6, 7, 8. After a while, Heinz stood in the middle of the fallen bandits with a knife in his shoulder, breathing heavily. He asked, "Why are there so many?" He lost count. He then pulled the weapon out of his shoulder and said that he forgot about it while he was fighting. He then turned to the bandit lying on the ground and put his foot on his head and shouted, "Hey big guy, where is the boy they captured today?" He asked indignantly, "Does he think he's just going to tell him everything?" He's an outsider, isn't he? He doesn't know who's behind him, but he's going to regret it. His boss will be arriving soon, and when he sees this, it will be the end of him. The avatar thanked him for the information and then swung his foot and said that he'd better worry about his own life. The next moment, a piercing scream of pain was heard. After a while, Heinz opened the door to the room and seeing the boy sitting on the ground, asked, "Is he Aaron?" Aaron, shaking with fear, grabbed his head and begged for mercy. The avatar leaned towards him, kneeling on one knee, extended his hand and told him not to be afraid. His sister asked him to save him. Aaron asked, "Does he know his sister?" At this time, a vampire in the form of a bat flew to the place. Heinz told Aaron that it was true. He would explain everything to him as soon as they left here. But first they needed to get out. The vampire had already landed on the window of this building and, turning into a human form, asked who he was. How dare he touch his food in his restaurant? Heinz was horrified. He felt a presence behind him, and the vampire continued while he was eating. Is he from an oath of disobedience? Heinz took the boy by the shoulder and a vampire. The vampire asked, or maybe he is this boy's brother? He knows what happens to those who challenge them. The avatar smirked and answered him. He is just an outsider who was robbed by his rabble. He covered Aaron with his hand and said that it was pure chance that he helped this boy. The vampire pointed his hand at him and said, "Really? How boring." He added that he preferred to eat boys, and they would die here. Heinz covered Aaron with his body and shouted at him to run. At that moment, the vampire released a magic projectile from his hand, which destroyed everything around him. The avatar, holding the boy close to him, lay on the floor and spilled alcohol and breathed heavily. Then he sat up and said, "The smell of alcohol. Is that a barrel?" Then he patted the boy on the head and asked, "Aaron, is he okay? Is that really it?" And he said that this was his last chance. He should hurry and run outside. The vampire landed next to him and said, "Dodged," so he was faster than he thought. A great warm-up before dinner. The next moment, he swung his hand with long claws. The avatar pushed Aaron towards the door and shouted at him to run. It doesn't matter what happens, as long as he doesn't come back. Then, with the help of the sword, he tried to repel the vampire's attack. But gritting his teeth, he noticed the claws that had become even longer. They pierced his body, and the vampire said, "He has a strong body, impressive regeneration abilities." Heinz clenched his teeth in pain and thought that the difference in strength was too great. The vampire licked his lips and said, "The dish was not planned, but it looks like it will become a real delicacy." The avatar thought that if he did not want to play, he would have died a long time ago. He can't just sit back. Then he swung his hand at him, but the vampire cut off his hand with his long claw and said, "Oh dear." He thought that he needed to scrape his bones a little before eating. He lifted the avatar in the air, impaled on his claws, and said that this is where his senseless resistance ends. He will pay for this. Then he approached his neck. Heinz thought, if there is a difference in strength, they should just die. At that moment, he released the ring from his mouth, setting everything around him on fire, and the vampire said, "What is this? A fire magic tool? Has he been hiding this all this time?" The avatar thought as he was thrown to the ground. He saw the alcohol spilling on the floor, and thought of how to take advantage of this situation. The vampire screamed in fear, "Crazy idiot! He doesn't want to die with him, right? If the fire touches the ground, he will burn alive. He has to get out." Then he cut the avatar's body with his claw. He laughed and said, "Fragile piece of flesh." But the next moment, Heinz hit him with all his might with his head, causing him to fly to the side, and screamed that he himself said that he has a strong body and good regeneration ability. He is a bit of a tough delicacy. The vampire screamed in horror, "No." Seeing the avatar approaching him, he shouted for him to stop. But the next moment, an explosion thundered through the building. Heinz, engulfed in flames, lay on the floor saying, "Wow, impressive, to think he survived." He realized that being strong can also be difficult. At that moment, he realized that the Help the Unlucky Girl mission had been successfully completed. Outside the burning building, Diana, hugging her brother, looked at the raging flames. She exclaimed, "Uncle." At that time, a system window appeared in front of the protagonist, where it was written that Avatar Heinz had died. The avatar will be reborn in 7 days. Sometime later, Diana was cleaning a man's shoes, and when the shoes sparkled in the sun, the man said, "That's enough." She agreed with him. The man walked on and said that he put the money on the table. Diana thanked him with a smile, and then, wiping the sweat from her forehead, sighed heavily. The avatar came up behind her and asked if it was okay to ask her a question. She turned around with a smile and said yes. Of course. Please, he must sit down. She then asked in surprise, huh? Her face lit up with happiness, and she hugged the avatar, happily exclaiming, Uncle. He's okay. Heinz too smiled, hugging her back, and said, Of course he's okay. Does he look like someone who can die so easily? None of this was true. However, the avatar really did die this time. The protagonist said that he would only be reborn in a week. Diana would be very nervous. Should I create a new avatar? He pointed his hand forward and said, From now on, he is Heinz 2. General Skill Acceleration. Note Sunghyun's third avatar. He thought that he was in a hurry to use the avatar. She wouldn't notice that he was different, right? She was sure that he was him because their souls were the same. Diana looked up at him and said that he couldn't come here anymore. The vampires would be looking for him. The avatar patted her head and told her not to worry. He had decided everything. He thought that he had the immortal King Hans on his side, so the vampires were no longer a problem. After a while, Heinz too sat on the edge of the bed and looked at the system window, thinking. He said that he would have to wait 10 days for the interdimensional transfer to complete. It would take longer than he thought, but it was okay. At that moment, Varric burst into the room, breaking through the wall, and grabbed him by the neck. He slammed his head against the wall and asked, Was this his doing, right? The tracks from the forest lead here. The avatar thought, Vampires. Have they figured everything out yet? The vampire said that the outsider was under the jurisdiction of his slain vampire. Heinz too felt like he was being strangled, but he couldn't muster the strength to fight back. He clenched his teeth and thought, What a monster. Varric approached his neck and said that he did not feel the aura of dark magic and did not smell the blood of his king. The avatar glanced at him out of the corner of his eye and asked, What is he talking about? He does not understand him. He was just sleeping. Varric smiled and asked, Really? He does not understand. He says he does not understand. Then he pressed the avatar to himself and sank his teeth into his neck, saying that then he will ask again. But slowly, it will not work to lie. Heinz too shook his whole body and thought that this is madness. Why is this happening to him again? The system window that appeared said that the entity's appearance changed to a vampire. Varric stepped aside and said again. A notification appeared in the system window that he received a special skill, the Legacy of Little Blood. The super regeneration skill was replaced with regeneration. The vampire, shrouded in an overwhelming aura, asked, Was he truly not involved in the vow of disobedience? The avatar felt the pressure and authority emanating from the higher vampire, and his blood seemed to scream for submission. He answered, Yes, Lord Varric, he is just a simple traveler. Despite this, he knew that he could ignore the instinct to obey, as the center of the mind acted as a kind of filter, blocking it. Varric turned away and said, Was he mistaken? He should follow him. They have important business. Heinz too thought with a smile, Okay, he will go and get some information. Soon they found themselves at the main office of the Azanta branch, the Varkalat clan. When they entered, the vampires present greeted Varric with respect. They turned their attention to the avatar and asked, What is this? New blood? The vampire covered her mouth with her hand and said, What was he thinking? Accept such scum? At that moment, Rosalicia ran up to Heinz too joyfully, holding a glass of liquid in her hand. She grabbed his hand and exclaimed, Hello. Little blood after all this time? Smiling sheepishly, she introduced herself as Rosalicia and asked what his name was. He looked at her and thought, What kind of drunkard is this? He then replied that his name was Heinz. Rosalicia handed him a glass of liquid and said that he shouldn't be so rude. They were the same minor blood, weren't they? Here, freshly squeezed blood. He should drink it. He took the glass in his hand and thought that maybe he should drink it to avoid suspicion. After taking a small sip, he felt a strong thirst even to the filter of the center of the mind. He thought that just drinking was dangerous. He would block the taste and smell and then drink it. When he drank the contents to the last drop, he said, Delicious. Rosalicia ran her finger along his cheek with a smile and said that she liked him. If you were a human, she would suck out all his blood to the last drop. He laughed awkwardly and asked, She called him a minor blood. What does that mean? Rosalicia thoughtfully put her finger to her chin and said, Huh? He doesn't know anything about vampire ranks, does he? A minor blood is like a knight among humans, and a pure blood is an aristocracy. For example, Lord Varric. The clan of leaders is known as the true blood. And then there is the sacred blood. Well, it is something like God. The avatar asked, God? She answered, their prophet, and the one they must obey completely. At this moment, Varric, standing on the second floor, banged his spoon on his glass several times and called for attention. He said that it seemed like everyone was gathered, so they could get down to business. The fragments of the immortal king disappeared. Perdita, the pure-blood vampire, adjusted a strand of her hair, watching what was happening. Varric said that it was determined that they were last transported to the city, but at some point they disappeared without a trace. The pure-blood vampire Teopole folded his arms over his chest, and Varric suggested that perhaps they had already entered the city. Heinz, looking up, asked in surprise, the fragments of the immortal king? Rosalicia, looking at him, sighed and asked, does he not know? The dark mages in a certain village were cultivating the fragments of the immortal king. Heinz wondered where the guys from the Oath of Defiance were. Varric said that from today on, each of them would thoroughly investigate the areas assigned to them, and they were to report any suspicious circumstances immediately. After a while, Rosalicia, shielding herself from the sun with an umbrella, said that if she walked around during the day, her skin would burn. Heinz, too, standing next to her and adjusting the hood of his cloak, said, sure, exposure to sunlight weakens it. Their faces were covered in sweat. She added that even the pure-blooded Lady Perdita had gone out to search, and they couldn't just sit around doing nothing. Then she said, well, it's surprising that the fragments disappeared. Moving their fragments was always a waste of effort. He looked at her and asked them, she has the fragments of the immortal king. She confirmed his words and said that the black magicians once cultivated the fragments, and she thought that they could combine them with their fragments. Clenching his fist, he thought, what a lucky streak. Now, it seems like one of the purebloods is guarding the fragments. He then grabbed her shoulders and shouted, where? She knows the location of the fragments. She laughed and asked, could someone like her know? After a while, Diana said that she thought she knew while putting another portion of food into her mouth. Heinz too asked in surprise, huh? The fragments of the immortal king? She knows where they are. He exclaimed in surprise, what? Diana said that she knew. She was not sure about it because a long time had passed. She said while eating her food that about a year ago, she had to keep the tomb clean. Every Friday, the members of the Varkalak Guild would come there and visit the stone chamber. However, every time, there was a foul smell inside the chamber. Sunghyun thought that he should investigate. Aaron said, sighing in surprise, that was why she forbade him to go near the tomb. The protagonist said, standing up from the table, that he thanked her for the interesting information. He would investigate there. It would be better for them to keep a low profile. Diana said, grabbing his hand and turning to him, that he seemed to smell different now. Could he tell her the reason? Sunghyun said, showing his fangs, that her nose was not deceiving her, but it just happened that way. It would not affect her, so she should not worry. Diana looked at him in shock. She said gloomily, holding his hand and turning to him, that if he got sick. Diana screamed, exposing her neck, that it was okay with her, so he could drink some of her blood. She said, stretching out her hand to him in fear, that she just wouldn't drink too much blood. The protagonist stared at her in complete shock. He screamed, hitting her on the head, that she should calm down. Sunghyun said, angry, that he already had enough, so she better answer where that place was. After a while, screams of pain were heard in the cemetery. Teopole said that he should stand there and stand still. He asked if he really wanted to die. Teopole said, smiling, that he only had one try. Let him attack him at least once, then he would gently send him back home. The man looked at him in horror with a weapon in his hands. He screamed and pounced on the vampire with an attack. Teopole said, using his ability, that this was so cruel. He bound the man with threads of his own blood. The man looked at this in shock and said that there was no need to do this. He screamed as his blood was sucked out, that he should stop this. Teopole said in frustration that he was very bored. He said, speaking rudely to his servant, that he needed to clean up the trash here and bring someone stronger here for the next sacrifice. The servant said, holding the remains of the man in his hands and speaking politely to him, that he would carry out his order. The servant asked, staring at the skeleton in surprise, who is that? Suddenly, a crowd of skeletons attacked the servant, killing him. Teopole shouted in anger, how did these filthy corpses get here? He shouted in anger that he orders his servants to get rid of these horrible skeletons. Suddenly, a dark shadow appeared, sliding between the skeletons, which dealt a crushing blow to the enemies. Teopole asked, in anger, who is that? Is he the necromancer from the Oath of Defiance? How does he know about this place? The protagonist, while in the body of Hans, used dark magic. Teopole said, looking at this with annoyance, that they won't tell him anything nicely. He doesn't care about it. He shouted, activating his ability, that it will be easier for him to ask his questions when he rips off his head. Teopole destroyed the skeletons with his attacks made of blood. Sunghyun thought, so you'll only leave his head? He used magic, turning the remains of the skeletons into weapons. The protagonist thought, smiling and using his ability, that he was curious to see how he would try to do this. Teopole thought, this spell is too fast. He won't be able to dodge it. Sunghyun called out to Teopole and blocked the attack. Teopole asked in surprise, are these reinforcements? He said, smiling, that he got here just in time. Has he already reported the ambush there? Heinz II shouted that he had already reported the incident here. Lord Varric's followers had already gathered outside. He had come there first to help him. Teopole said, angry, that this was great news and he had to help him. This demonic was strong enough. They had to buy time for reinforcements to arrive. The protagonist, represented by the younger vampire, sank his fangs into him. Teopole turned around in surprise, asking, how could this happen? Why was there blood on him? Had he gone crazy, idiot? The protagonist, represented by Hans, used his dark magic. Teopole said, looking at it in shock, that this was dark magic. Had they conspired against him? How could this happen? He had to stop immediately. Teopole screamed in horror, how could he drink the blood of his own kind? Drinking the blood of your kin is a grave sin that clouds your mind. He said as he fell to the ground, that this couldn't happen. Heinz II asked, wiping the blood from his lips with his hand, is it really clouding the mind? However, it will work on him. A system window popped up with information that the personality, Heinz II, had inherited the skill, blood magic. He said with a smile that this was great news. Now with his new ability, it would not be difficult for him to break this blood barrier. Hans said that they don't have enough time for that. Heinz II said with a smile that then he just has to smash it. A deafening explosion thundered, destroying the roof of the tomb. Sunghyun said with a smile that they found it. Hans said that this is really what they came here for. Heinz II said that this is the second fragment of the Immortal King. Hans said, reaching out his hand to it, that he found another fragment. He said, absorbing it, that this is simply an amazing thought. The protagonist thought that even if he filtered out the negative thoughts with the mind center, there were too many of them in this fragment. The mental power of all the clones should focus on the personality of Hans. Suddenly, a pillar of dark energy burst out. Varric said in surprise, looking up, what is this fog? Are they too late? He stared in surprise at the floating skeleton, from which dark energy emanated. Varric ordered his subordinates to attack it. The vampires, using their abilities, launched arrows of blood at it. Hans glared at them and used dark magic to crush one with a powerful blow. Varric said, looking at him in surprise, that this silhouette reminded him of something. A system window popped up with information that the skill, regeneration, had evolved into the special skill, immortality. He inherited the special skill, forbidden knowledge. The status of the personality, Hans, was changed to Archlich. After a while, the holy paladins arrived at the cemetery. One of them asked, is this fire or what is it? It seems to be coming from Azanthu. He coughed from the dark energy. Tuscan said, touching it, that they need to turn the horses around. They are returning back to the cathedral. He must inform the saint about this. He said, looking up, that this is not ordinary ash at all. This is a sign of the rebirth of the Immortal King. After a while, Hans thought it was just incredible. He had become 5 times stronger, or even 10 times stronger. A system window popped up with information that the personality, Hans, received special skills. With the power of the Immortal King fragment, his rank has increased by 2/3, and his secret dark magic energy has increased rapidly. As long as his source is not destroyed, he will be reborn endlessly. He also gained the essence traits, evil wisdom, and forbidden knowledge. He has now gained an unconditional understanding of dark magic, and has learned all the secrets. The protagonist used dark energy to attack the vampires. Varric asked in surprise, is this smoke a trap? What is his plan? The vampire subordinate said, addressing him politely, that they should first get out of here and restore their strength. Unexpectedly, the dark energy engulfed this servant and destroyed him. Varric stared at his killed subordinate in shock. He said in fear that maybe this was an attack spell. Suddenly, he was pierced by dark thorns, and he screamed in pain. Sunghyun, using the avatar Hans, said that his opponent was definitely stronger than the other purebloods. Right now, he is nothing more than a blood bag to him, Varric asked in anger. Where did he get such a powerful force? Did he really manage to completely absorb the fragment? How did he even manage to endure so much darkness alone? Heinz II asked, is he really interested? He prepared to sink his fangs into him and said that he is simply not alone. He completely drank the blood of Varric, whose body then fell to the ground. The system window notified that the entity had fulfilled the conditions for growth. Especially the skill, Legacy Small Blood, is transferred to Legacy Pure Blood. Heinz II thought that this was clearly a success, because he became a pure-blooded vampire. By devouring other vampires, he can grow faster. Let them wait for him, because he will devour them all. After a while, in the forest, Rosalicia shouted that she needed Purita. She asked in fear, what should they do now? Rosalicia said with tears in her eyes, if Lady Purita was there, they would not have surrendered to this enemy so easily. Purita said that Varric had been defeated. This opponent should not be underestimated. She said, touching the dark magic with her hand, that the remnants of the fragments contained an excessive amount of magic. So this enemy was very strong. The sun was already rising, and they should quickly return to the base, where they could request reinforcements. After a while, a man ran along the city street, cursing loudly. He asked, leaning his hand on the wall and speaking rudely, they would not pursue him to the end, right? These vampires are to blame for everything. They acted so arrogantly, but they were destroyed in an instant. He made a mistake when he trusted them. Heinz II grabbed this man from the shadows. A scream of horror was heard from the alley. Sunghyun thought that he left Hans in the city to deal with the remains of Varkalak, and he attached the identity of Heinz II to a small merchant guild so that he would leave the city with Diana and her brother. After some time in the forest, Heinz II said with a frying pan in his hand that if he sprinkled it well with pepper, it would make a special steak. Diana and her brother happily stared at the delicious food and sighed in admiration. They happily said that they were grateful to him and that it was very delicious. The protagonist said with a smile that they could eat in peace since it would be good for their health. Sunghyun thought that they could be so happy because the danger was behind them. The protagonist asked with a smile, did they have an uncle who ran a store in Eastern Lapilas? Diana said with a nod of her head that they did. She said with a nervous smile that she really didn't know if her uncle would be happy to see them. He said that she shouldn't worry about it. Sunghyun thought that if it didn't work out, he should just give them money. He felt so sad thinking about parting with them. When was the last time he felt like this? Maybe he had changed a lot since he came to this world. She called his name, reaching out her hand to him. Diana asked, looking at him worriedly, is he really okay? Maybe he wants blood. The protagonist said, laughing, that he was fine. He had eaten a lot there. He thought that he had managed to drink the blood of all the vampires who remained in the village. At the same time, the personality of the protagonist named Hans was turning the corpses of vampires into undead in the cemetery. He said that it was time for him to finish this and let them go inside. This space was incredibly convenient, and it was endless. The protagonist thought that forbidden knowledge and evil wisdom went well together. Maybe he could open a subspace to Earth? Suddenly, he was attacked by blood magic. Varkalak asked, looking at him angrily, is he still resting in their city? Is he underestimating them too much? A purebred vampire, asked using blood magic, is he really a member of the Oath of Defiance? Hans thought that if she thought that way about him, he should thank her for it. He said that he was Hans, who was an honorary member of the Oath of Defiance. She said angrily, creating a weapon from her blood, that it was just a lie because their hideout was destroyed. So, wasn't he the one who stole the fragment of the Immortal King and escaped? Said, holding the weapon in her hand, that none of this mattered anymore. She shouted, jumping from the roof, that he was going to die anyway. The protagonist did not have time to dodge her attack. He thought, looking at the severed spine, that it was very close. Stared at him in shock. Sunghyun thought, looking at her, that she had incredible strength, so a purebred vampire is not an easy opponent for him. He crashed into the barrier, and was surprised by this. Asked, did he really think that he could easily escape from here? The best blood mages of her clan set up a barrier. The protagonist thought, touching the barrier with his hand, that he could break through it, but he would have to try hard for it. However, he needed more time to get used to his new power. She said, using blood magic, that she would be able to cut his skull, and then personally extract the fragment from it. Sunghyun thought that then there was only one option. The protagonist said, grinning, that she should remember this: he is from the oath of disobedience, and he is her death. He can retreat, but next time he will definitely come back for her. He thought that this is the trademark of a villain, always leaving dramatically. The protagonist used his ability to call Hans back from there. The subordinate of the pure-blooded vampire asked why he said that. The servant who raised his hand said that it was very inappropriate. Over screamed, looking at him in surprise. How did he get through the barrier? Suddenly, one of the servants was killed from behind by an arrow. She said, looking anxiously, that these were the holy silver arrows of the paladins. The subordinate shouted, pointing his index finger to the side, that they had a big problem. The paladins of the Order of the Church of the Supreme God have arrived here. They have already surrounded the tomb and are approaching them. Overthought, speaking rudely and angrily, clenching her teeth, that she was cursing this lich. Was this why he stayed in the city and delayed them here? He was too cunning, so wherever he was, she had to find him. She angrily shouted that she would definitely be able to find him and kill him. After a while, in the protagonist's room, Sunghyun said, sighing in relief, that he was still alive. Hans said that recall is a cheat code, and he was convinced of it. Sunghyun shamefully recalled what he said before using the ability, recall. He asked, swinging his legs on the bed, why did he use a typical line from the villain's dialogue? He will die of shame like that. The protagonist asked, clutching his face with his hands, why did he even say that? Was he crazy? He asked, using the personality of Hans, was he really proud of his strength? He said that he managed to deal with a group of evil vampires. And he also managed to save a defenseless girl and her brother and an entire city. Sunghyun said with a smile that now, after saying that, he feels like a hero. He asked while stretching, now he should have earned himself karma, right? The protagonist said that he was calling Karma's shop. He stared at the system window in surprise. A system window popped up with information that his Karma shop balance was 731,002 points. Sunghyun asked in shock, how did he already have more than 700,000 points? After all, he had already spent everything on upgrading. Why were there so many points again? He asked with a nervous smile. Was it because he managed to enrage the vampires and dark mages, so that was why it affected his karma so much? The protagonist said, pressing the system window, that he could figure it out later. But for now, should he improve the special skill again? A system window popped up with information that his limit on summoning avatars had been increased. He said, smiling, that the number of avatars had now been increased for him. However, were there any other additional skills? The system window notified that he had acquired the special skill, Persona. Sunghyun said, happily looking at the system window, that this was what he was counting on. Was the skill, Persona, similar to the skill, Mind Center? He should check it out. Then he thought that the special skill, Persona, uses the avatar as a vessel for emotions. The growth of the special skill occurs in the direction the user needs. The system determined what he needed now. Now he understands why he needs this. He established connections with strangers and helped defeat strong enemies. However, he sat in his room for 2 years. And the reason he was able to do all this is because for him, what was happening there was just a game. But in reality, he still has to sit locked in his room there. So the reality he had been avoiding all along is now right in front of him. The loneliness, sadness, and anger he had to suppress, as well as other accumulated negative emotions. He said to Hans that he needed to transfer these terrible emotions into a vessel. The protagonist thought, is this so refreshing? However, he does not feel the emotions disappear. It was as if they had just been neatly placed in a box. Now he wondered how Hans was feeling, who had absorbed his negative emotions. Hans said that he shouldn't worry about it. He said, covering himself with dark energy, that pain and despair were his eternal companions, so they didn't bother him at all. Sunghyun thought, looking at him in surprise, that this couldn't be true, although he had said it, but his tone had changed. Hans said, laughing, that it had gotten through to him. An avatar who had been filled with emotions could now have its own personality. The protagonist wanted to express his thoughts, but suddenly there was a loud noise outside the window. He asked, was that an explosion? Why could this be happening now? Sunghyun asked, looking out the window, was there another villain? Was he there in the city now? So things were getting worse every day. He said, holding his face in his hands, that he shouldn't worry about it now. Let the Guardians deal with it there. It's not happening right in front of him like last time. So it doesn't concern him at all. Hans asked if he needed a reason to eradicate evil. The protagonist thought, looking into his eyes, that after he transferred his negative emotions to Hans, everything became clear to him. Avoiding is his habit. Although he always wanted to defeat evil the most, he always made up excuses because he lacked the courage to do so. Hans said that the world order was shaken there. Criminals were everywhere there now. He said, using his power and wearing a mask, that he would now become their law. Sometime later, at the site of the explosion, people were discussing the incident. They asked how many times had this happened there. The villains began to carry out terrorist attacks. Why haven't they called for reinforcements yet? Hans thought that the villains had created an organization there. They didn't have much time left. He would be ashamed to leave empty-handed. He used dark magic and created the Eye of Darkness. He thought it was time for them to be his eyes and ears in the darkness. After all, there were sinners hiding in the shadows. At that time, in the alley, some schoolchildren were making fun of their classmate. They said that they should bring him an ashtray. This was the ashtray man. The schoolboy laughed and held a cigarette to another schoolboy. They said that he was the best of all the ashtrays. The schoolboy who was being held down shouted that he begged them to stop. At that time, a woman asked, holding her child tightly, where they could run. A man with a drunken face shouted, swinging his belt, that she was deceiving him. At that time, a masked robber broke the window of the store and got inside. He said, opening the cash register, that this would be enough for him. Hans thought that he could see everything. Now he needed to punish the villains. They were no different from garbage. This punishment would be trauma, even a very stunning trauma. So he needed to instill fear in their souls. They are the seeds of evil that must remember this day. And when evil grows in them again, they will be met by darkness. Screams of horror were heard in the city. Hans thought that he was getting more and more used to the power. However, he needed more, much more. Because he needed to clean them more. He needed to clean this whole city of evil. After a while, Hans stretched tiredly and said that he had been cleaning out the garbage that was hidden in the darkness all night, and it felt good. He thought that the Eye of Darkness was quite useful, but its limitations were obvious. Under the influence of light, they weakened and disappeared. He needed a more effective way to detect enemies. However, he could not release the undead into the city. What should he do in this case? The protagonist shouted rudely that these birds had soiled his clothes. Maybe he should kill them all and make them his minions. He looked in surprise at the flying birds. Hans said that it was an invisible eye that could move freely around the city. And that was a very good idea. After a while, the protagonist thought that familiars are the enslavement magic used by dark magicians to control animals. Hans asked, surrounded by birds, why it didn't work for him. Sunghyun thought that he had to try different ways to create a familiar, but so far he hadn't succeeded. Hans said that it would be great if they looked normal, but were infectious. However, if he reduced the amount of magic power to simplify the appearance, then its ability to infect would suffer. The protagonist thought that now he understood the complexity, and why programmers grit their teeth in debugging. Now he uses infectious enslavement magic, which is a revision of the final version of version number 3. He asked, did it work? A mutated cat jumped out of the cage, which disappointed him. Sunghyun thought that after 3 weeks of research, he still did not have any significant result. He asked, clicking his tongue in displeasure and looking at the bird in the cage, is this the last one like this? So this time everything should work out. The protagonist said displeasedly, trying to hold the bird in his hands, let it freeze for at least a second. This time, he needs to better regulate the amount of magic power. He thought that he needs to use the contagious enslavement magic. This is now definitely a revision of the final version number 3. The protagonist said, sighing in relief that he finished doing this. He asked in surprise while the bird flew out of his hands, what does this mean? Sunghyun thought that they now looked normal. So he only had to test the ability to infect. The infected bird landed next to the other birds and began to release dark energy. The protagonist thought that this was an excellent result, even a complete success. The infected objects become his eyes and ears there. He shouted, putting his hand in front of him, that it was time for them to move out. They must fly away. Sunghyun thought that they would find enemies for him. At this time, not far away in the forest, Lacius knelt down and touched the ground. He remembered the words of the personality Hans, who used the skill, recall. Tuscan said, turning to him, that his knights had arrived. Lacius said, turning to him, that he was glad that they had finally arrived. Tuscan said irritably that after interrogating the remaining vampires, they captured them. However, they are not allies of the descendants of the immortal king. Lacius said that they needed more evidence. They have not dealt with it yet, although the immortal king is already gaining power. He used the magic on his cross to communicate and asked, addressing them politely, did they call him? The saint said, using magic to transmit information, that the presence of the immortal king was noticed among them. Currently, it is in a cave in the mountains northwest of this place. Lacius said, holding the cross in his hands, that he was grateful for this information, and he will definitely live up to their expectations. After some time in the cave, the protagonist thought that he had managed to set up his familiars to send information when encountering monsters. Now he had to check if the information was being received correctly. Strange things are happening here. The ground familiars are not acting as usual. Apparently, they are trying to escape from there. Are they scared? If they had discovered a monster, they would have immediately informed him about it, right? So it can only be people. They discovered people? Why are they in such a remote area? Does this mean an ambush for him? But this can't be. How can such a large number of people remain unnoticed and hide their presence? One of the familiars was suddenly shot. Tuscan said, addressing him, that he is a participant in the oath of disobedience. His pathetic tricks will not work on them. No evil can escape the sign of the saint. He will not be able to escape from here. He said, taking out his weapon, that he should surrender, and let him know divine justice. The protagonist thought that these were holy knights. He was familiar with this emblem from his training in Brokaslack. Divine power is opposed to dark magic, so it will not be easy for him to cope with it. Hans asked, turning to them, how did the servants of the church find him here? Tuscan struck him with his weapon and said that no one gave him the right to speak. He said, looking at him with irritation, that he should not think that he can deceive him with his words. The protagonist said that his enemy is too stubborn. He thought maybe he should deceive them and just run away. Tuscan said that such cheap tricks cannot defeat them. He said, using light magic, that he cannot deceive the servants of the saint. The protagonist was pierced with a weapon with light magic. He asked, did he really consider punishing villains a crime? Tuscan said, activating his light magic, that he had better shut up. From the moment his mind was mired in the forbidden power, he became one of the villains. Sunghyun asked, activating his dark magic, where's the logic in this? He thought that since something unpleasant interfered with my magic recently, he has become weak. The protagonist was thrown aside by the blow. Tuscan shouted that they should start singing the anthem. He lured him out. Sunghyun thought, clutching his head, that their anthem was draining his strength. He could kill them and shut them up, but he hated the idea of hurting innocent people. Tuscan shouted, standing next to him, that the singers should not stop. The protagonist was stabbed from behind with a weapon. He said that this was their chance to win. Let them calm him down. Sunghyun thought that this was not good. He was too careless. He thought, chained up in chains, that he was in danger now. He couldn't move or use magic, because these chains wouldn't even let him escape from here. The protagonist said that they had done a good job of catching him. Tuscan said that this was exactly what he expected. No evil had ever escaped from these chains. He wouldn't resist anymore. The protagonist said, grinning, as if he wanted this. It was obvious to him that it was impossible to come to an agreement with them. They would part ways here. Let them catch him if they could. They were just lackeys of the church. Tuscan said while activating light magic that he didn't know what exactly his enemy was planning. He asked while attacking him. He didn't think about how he would just stand there, did he? The protagonist thought with a smirk that it was all useless. It didn't matter how strong these chains were, because Hans was already free. Tuscan asked in surprise, did he manage to break free from the chains? This couldn't happen. He thought, who the hell is he? Sunghyun said tiredly while lying on the bed that this was already becoming a problem for him. He thought that he had too many enemies out there. Could it be that wherever he went, he could only create chaos? First, the Shadow Faction, Oath of Defiance. Then the Vampire Clan Varkalak, and now one of the continent's biggest powers, the Paladin Order, have become his enemies. He suddenly remembered one important thing. The protagonist had called up the system window with the karma store. Sunghyun thought that there was a reason why he had been earning karma until today. Don't tell him. Everything is not just like that, and this is happening to him because he attracts villains from all over the continent. He said with a heavy sigh that it would be better for him to think about it later. For now, it would be better to focus on the original plan. After some time in the city, the protagonist thought that it was time to reap the benefits of his research. The principle of controlling the essence by spreading black magic is simple. His eyes and ears will be everywhere. They can even cover a place like Seoul with ease. He thought, using the familiar size, they have already arrived. So this is the first signal, the girl said in fear, with tears in her eyes, begging him to spare her. It would be easy for her to do anything if he let her go. She screamed, noticing the guy in the window and turning to him, that she needed help. She was being held here by force. Couldn't he hear her? Why was he leaving? The man with the knife said, grabbing her hair with his hand, that it was useless. Let her scream as much as she wanted, because it didn't matter how loud she screamed. He had an ability that would make them invisible. Only he would hear her screams and suffering. He said, pulling her hair with his hand, that she needed to scream louder. She had a cute voice. The man with the knife shouted, preparing to hit her with the weapon, that she would be among the top 3 in his collection. Hans broke through the ceiling with his dark magic. The man with the knife asked in surprise, how could such a thing happen there? He asked, his ability is sound suppression and invisibility, right? The protagonist said, looking at him angrily, that it wouldn't work on him. His disgusting deeds would end today. The man with the knife asked, angry, who was he? Was he a guardian? How did he even get here? He said, holding the weapon to the woman's throat, that he was warning him. If he dared to come closer to him, she would die. Sunghyun asked, activating dark magic, could this really be true? He asked, snatching the woman from him and taking her into his hands. And now what would he do? The man with the knife asked in surprise, so he was a returnee? He asked angry, how dare he steal his prey? Now he would kill her along with him. The man with the knife pounced on the protagonist, but was suddenly grabbed by dark energy. The protagonist said that, judging by his conversation, this was not his first victim. He asked while binding him with dark energy and touching his forehead with his fingers, he doesn't mind if he checks it himself, does he? Sunghyun, using the identity of Hans, used necromancy magic and activated the skill, Cry of the Dead. He saw his memories where he tortured his victims before killing them. The protagonist said that he is a serial killer, so he doesn't even need to look further. He sentences him to death. The man with the knife screamed in agony due to the pain of using dark magic on him. Sunghyun said that even death would be too merciful to him. However, he still needs an undead to command on Earth. His enemy is the perfect option. He doesn't mind at all if he turns him into a servant, right? He said using his ability that this is a cruel method that involves sucking blood from the body. So he didn't expect that he would be able to create him so soon. A system window popped up that a pumped undead named Gast was created. The protagonist said that he needed to go to the subspace portal. He would definitely need it later. The protagonist said, looking at the unconscious woman, that now he had to decide what to do with her. Maybe he should clean up before leaving? It would be better for him to just call the emergency services. After a while, police officers gathered on the street, who did not allow people to enter the scene. Park Han-chul, the leader of the Criminal Investigation Department team from the Special Ops Bureau, looked thoughtfully at the window. The man in the suit said, turning to him, that they confirmed the footage from the scene. This is definitely the serial killer they could not catch. Han-chul asked, looking irritated, is the person who killed the criminal a returnee? The man in the suit said that they were able to confirm it. However, they cannot find the body, but a huge amount of dark magic was used and traces of blood were found at the crime scene. Someone worthy of death definitely died here. However, this case is a real nightmare. Han-chul asked, is he just joking? Getting drunk on power and playing the hero, that's what it really looks like. And such people are very dangerous. What do they think the law is for? The protagonist said, standing on the roof, that the executions had been successful. A civilian on the street asked, looking at the roof, is that a sleepwalker up there? Who is he anyway? Han said, petting the cat, that he wanted to see his face at least once. After some time, at the association that repatriates South Korean citizens, Seoul South Branch, the secretary said that she was calling the branch manager. Let her excuse her, but she needs to come in for a minute. Let her wake up, Young Ji-in. She has a very important matter to ask her. Let her get ready. Young Ji-in raised her not quite sober head and asked what time it was. What happened there? She stretched out her hands to the papers and said that the Special Ops Bureau sent them a request for cooperation. She looked at the papers and asked, is this a case about the arrest of 3 jewel thieves? Is this case related to the recent murder? She thought that the same dark mage was wearing a long coat and a mask. She put the tablet on her head and said that the public security situation is complicated. They are not sending them reinforcements. She almost handed this case over to that guy. The secretary was very surprised and asked what she just said. That idiot is a murderer. She found someone to hand this over to. She rebelled and threw her fists up sharply. She said that's exactly what she said, he's capable. So if they tame him, he'll make a great dog. The secretary got an unhappy pose and asked, can he join them as guardians? She knows very well that she's busy with work, but maybe it will work out. Let her stop talking nonsense and get back to work. She started to aggressively tap her finger on the documents and hinted that she should see this huge stack of documents. Ji-yoon looked at this with displeasure and remained silent. A few moments later, she slammed the table, causing the documents to fly apart. She screamed that she wanted to tear these damn villains to pieces. After a while, the protagonist stood by the window and warmed up. He said with a satisfied face that destroying the villains brings him pleasure. He thought that if it is not a serial killer, he stops at saturating the curse of terror and punishes them accordingly. He thinks this is very small. He looked carefully at the city street and said that later, soon he would have to take a look at these guys. The organization of villains was causing complete chaos. Okay, and now that he had more or less figured it out, maybe he should pay attention to the other world. After a while in the other world, Uncle Diana and Aaron were screaming their names in tears. The children ran up to him and started hugging. He said that they had been through so much. They had worked so hard. The children were screaming and saying that they were fine. Heinz looked at this with a smile and thought that he was very happy. He seemed like a very nice person. If he had acted in any suspicious way, he might have had to resort to threats, but that did not seem necessary. Their uncle took his hand and thanked him heartily for bringing the children to him. Heinz started waving his hand and said that he had not really done anything, but it had to happen. Diana came up to him and said that she was very grateful to him for all that time together. She hugged him and screamed that she was very happy. He stroked her head and said that they were not parting forever, he would visit them often. And now they should behave well and be healthy. She continued to cry and said that she was a little worried because it seemed to her that he was changing a lot, but she was calmed by the fact that she knew that he was a very good person. He asked fearfully, is he really changing? He thought maybe it is the influence of the persona skill. Hans is a mixture of negative emotions. He wants to gain recognition, and in other words, he is an attempt to attract attention. And he is focused on intrigue and lies. It seems that he got a calm and stable character. Diana looked at him sadly and asked where he went now. He said that he will take advantage of all opportunities and go on a pilgrimage. After some time in the capital of the kingdom of Talia, Delaria. There is only one reason why Heinz came there. Delaria leads the Church of the Goddess and is home to the largest temple in this land. He walked through the streets of this city and carefully examined everything around. He went into the gateway and said that no one should follow him there. He used his ability and began to summon the fourth avatar Heinlich. His common features are the center of the mind, persona, super regeneration, calm. A unique feature is the spirit of a warrior. He gets additional bonuses to skills and experience acquired through training and combat. Heinz handed him a bag and said that he does not really walk around the holy city in the body of a vampire. Therefore, he should take this and go into the light. After some time, Heinlich came to the elder with a bag. The old man sat on a chair, with his subordinates standing next to him. He said that the next believer could come up. Suddenly, Heinlich poured a pile of gold on him, which surprised the elder very much. He began to count and stack the coins on top of each other, after which he asked how much was there in total. Heinlich said that this was all his fortune. He put his hand on his heart and said that he wanted to dedicate everything to the goddess and become a paladin to fulfill her will. He thought that until now his avatars were the undead, the dark mage and the vampire. They are children of the vile darkness. However, this time his avatar will be a paladin respected by everyone. He will become a light paladin. The elder slammed his fist on the table, causing the coins to fly apart. Instructor Marco extended his hand to him and said that he was a very sincere young man. He would make an excellent paladin out of him. The old man was very surprised and told him to wait a little. After all, no matter how much he sacrificed, they cannot just take an unknown person as a paladin. Marco laughed heartily and told the other not to worry about it. Villains inevitably reveal their true nature during training. What does the recruit think? Will he have the courage to show them his true nature? Heinlich happily agreed with him. After some time of hard training, he began to scream that he really wanted to drink water. He tried to catch his breath, and sweat was pouring down his face. A huge iron ball flew at him, after which he thought, "What is this? This is madness." He stopped the ball with his strength and tensed all his muscles. He thought that exactly a month had passed since that moment. He began the damn training. At first, he thought that the Paladin Order was noble and cool, but it turned out that they were just a group of macho perverts. All the Paladins were training hard in that room and shouting words of encouragement. Heinrich continued to work hard. One of the Paladins approached number 12, that he began to lose concentration. Did he probably forget about the rules? He can't stop praying during training. He lay down in front of his face and shouted that this was very good. He should concentrate and recite the prayers again. Number 12 diligently continued training and shouted that he accepted his order. He began to recite a prayer out loud. The coach shouted and encouraged him that he should concentrate more. Let him recite the prayers and restore his weak body. Number 12 raised the iron ball above himself and shouted the prayers. The coach praised him for his success. Heinrich looked at this from the side and thought that in an emergency, repeated prayers strengthen faith and increase divine power. He admits that it is quite productive and effective. Not far from them, two men were beating a third with sledgehammers. He shouted that his back feels great today. Let them beat him even harder. Another paladin stood and tried to break the spiked iron ball with his bicep. They all shouted about the goddess, that their faith is getting stronger. Heinrich looked at this and thought, do they really have to train like this? The trainer approached Marco on the second floor and asked if the new recruit he brought was a simpleton. Marco asked what if he was like that. The trainer said that even before the baptism, he lifted such a huge weight. His shoulders and lower body became invulnerably strong. He can't wait to see what the baptism will do to him. Heinrich heard this and thought that this was so disgusting. Why are they drooling over his body? He felt incredibly uncomfortable. He didn't want to attract attention in this perverted group. Don't forget to subscribe if you like the story. See you again.